Travis Turner never meant to sit at that kitchen table, it just sort of happened. One worn math worksheet and a nervous smile at a time. "Do you mind helping him? I'm useless with fractions," the woman said, brushing her long dark hair over one shoulder as she motioned to her son. "I'll make you coffee." Travis nodded, setting his tool bag down near the door. "Sure, I've got a kid too. I'm kinda pro at 5th grade math by now." And just like that, he was hunched over a binder with a shy boy named Aiden, explaining how to simplify improper fractions while the smell of fresh coffee filled the small but spotless kitchen. He hadn't expected that when he'd shown up to fix a broken window latch in her rental unit. The woman Brielle Grant, according to the name on the lease, had answered the door in leggings and a hoodie, her face makeup-free but somehow still stunning. Her place looked like she'd just moved in, boxes stacked by the hallway, a single vase on the table, and not a single personal photo in sight. "Aiden," Travis said, tapping his pencil on the paper. "You see how this one's got a bigger number on top? That's an improper fraction. You just divide the top by the bottom." Aiden blinked at him. "So, 5/2 is." 2.5, Travis said, smiling. "Boom, you got this." Brielle returned with 2 mugs and set one down in front of Travis. "Thanks. He gets nervous about school stuff. His last tutor made him cry." "Seriously?" Travis raised a brow, then looked at Aiden. "You're doing great, buddy. Don't let anyone make you feel dumb." Aiden grinned. That smile, Travis realized, hit him right in the gut. It reminded him of his daughter, Ava. She was the same age, maybe a couple months older. He was picking her up from school in an hour, but for now, he was here helping this sweet, quiet kid and drinking coffee made by a woman who looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, not in a half-furnished rental in Queens. "Do you tutor?" Brielle asked suddenly. Travis laughed. "No, I'm a handyman. Fix things, mostly windows, doors, appliances. Only know this stuff 'cause my daughter has the same homework." Brielle looked at him for a second longer than necessary, then smiled. "Well, you're better than the last guy I paid." He shrugged, happy to help. He left that day with a crumpled $20 bill in his pocket and a weird feeling in his chest. He couldn't explain it, just something about her. She was kind, but guarded, beautiful, but low-key, and clearly raising that boy alone, just like he was with Ava. He didn't expect to see her again. But 2 days later, she called the maintenance line again. The sink was dripping. When he showed up, she answered the door in pajama pants and a messy bun, holding a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "I figured you'd be the one they sent," she said, smiling. "I'm starting to think you're breaking things just so I'll come back," Travis joked, stepping inside. "Maybe," she said, half laughing. "Or maybe I just need help with Aiden's science project." And that's how it started. Every couple of days, something broke and Travis showed up. He'd fix the issue, then somehow end up staying a little longer helping Aiden with an assignment, sharing a laugh with Brielle over burnt toast, or talking about their kids like they were the only 2 people in the world who understood the chaos of single parenting. She never wore makeup, she never mentioned a job. At first, he assumed she worked from home, maybe a teacher or a writer. She never said, and he never asked. He didn't want to pry. Besides, he liked the mystery of her. Then one Friday, Ava came with him because her school had closed early. Brielle opened the door and immediately invited her in. "You must be Ava," she said warmly. "Aiden's in the kitchen, he's making a volcano." "Cool," Ava said, dashing past them. Travis stood awkwardly in the hallway. "Hope it's okay. I didn't want to leave her at home." "I'm glad she came," Brielle said softly. "It's nice, seeing you 2 together." Later, while the kids watched a movie, Brielle handed Travis a beer and sat beside him on the couch. "You talk about her all the time," she said. "It's obvious you're a good dad." Travis took a sip, unsure why her words hit so deep. "Try. It's not easy doing everything alone." She looked at him carefully. You're not alone now, at least, not tonight. His heart thudded once hard. The next time he came over, it wasn't because something was broken. She just asked if he'd come by to help Aiden with a book report. He said yes, even though he was exhausted from a full day of crawling under sinks and replacing busted heaters. But when he arrived, the lights were dimmed, the table was set, candles flickered. Aiden was at a sleepover. You didn't need help with homework, did you? He asked, stepping inside. No, she whispered. I just wanted to have dinner with you. She wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, but the way she looked at him made his throat dry. They ate pasta and drank wine and laughed harder than either of them had in months. He told her about Ava's obsession with comic books. She told him how Aiden once tried to build a rocket out of soda cans. By the time the plates were cleared, Travis was leaning closer, his fingers brushing hers. You don't talk much about your past, he said. That's because it's complicated. Her eyes searched his, but like this, us, like how it feels when you're here. He didn't kiss her that night. He wanted to, but something held him back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the thought of screwing up something that felt too pure, too rare. He didn't know who she really was. And she didn't know that his bank account barely had $50 in it. But none of that mattered when she smiled at him like that. After that dinner, things changed. He started coming by just to see her. They'd sit on the couch while their kids did homework. She'd rest her head on his shoulder. He'd bring her flowers from the corner bodega. She'd make him laugh until his stomach hurt. He was falling for her, hard. But she was hiding something, he knew it, he just didn't know what. Until the night, he saw the black SUV pull up outside her building. She was standing on the sidewalk, dressed in a navy blazer and heels, talking to a man in a suit who called her ma'am and opened the door for her like she was royalty. Travis froze behind the corner, watching. What the hell was going on? Who was Brielle Grant? And why did it feel like the woman he was falling for wasn't being honest with him at all? Travis showed up to the building the next morning, toolbox in hand, heart thudding harder than it should have. He told himself it was just a coincidence. Maybe Brielle had family in town. Maybe she was interviewing for a job. Maybe hell, he didn't know, but he needed to. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her stepping into that black SUV, her expression unreadable, her posture too smooth to belong to someone scraping by. He'd spent weeks believing she was like him, scratching together rent, juggling parenthood, trying to stay afloat. But now he wasn't sure of anything. He pressed the intercom at apartment 3C. It buzzed once, then her voice came through, soft but weary. Come up. When he reached the door, she was already standing there. No hoodie, no leggings. A tailored cardigan over a sleeveless blouse, hair pinned back. She looked different, not overdressed, not flashy, but intentional. You okay? He asked, trying to sound casual. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped aside, letting him in. Aiden's still asleep. He stayed up late finishing his diorama. Told him you might stop by. Travis set his toolbox down without opening it. I saw you yesterday. Brielle didn't move. I figured. That guy in the suit, the car, you weren't dressed like someone grabbing groceries. No, she said, her voice flat. I wasn't. He waited, but she didn't elaborate. She walked into the kitchen and poured coffee into 2 mugs. The silence dragged until he followed her in. You want to tell me what's going on, he said. She set his mug on the counter. I wasn't lying, just wasn't ready to explain all of it. Explain what? Brielle leaned against the counter, folding her arms. My family owns a corporation, real estate mostly. Hotels, commercial properties, private equity. My father passed away last year, and I inherited controlling interest. Travis blinked. Wait, hold on, your family owns property, like buildings. She nodded, hundreds. He stared at her, so you're a landlord. That's one word for it. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. Why are you living in a rental in Queens? Her eyes lifted to his, steady and clear. Because I needed to get out. After the funeral, there were board meetings, lawyers, people circling me like vultures. Everyone had an opinion. About the company, about Aiden, about how I should live. Couldn't breathe. So you walked away from it? Temporarily. I stepped down as CEO. I moved out of the penthouse. I didn't want staff. I didn't want security. I wanted to know what it felt like to just live without being watched or managed or scheduled. Travis let that sink in. So you've been pretending. No, she said quickly. I've been hiding, there's a difference. He paced the small kitchen, the weight of it all pressing down. I've been showing up here thinking we were the same, and all this time you've got people in suits opening car doors for you. I never meant to lie, she said, stepping toward him, but I didn't want you to treat me differently. He turned to her. How could I not? You have everything I don't. You've got money, power, hell, you probably have a place for Aiden at some private school with a marble fountain in the lobby. I pulled him out of that school, she said, her voice tight. He hated it. Travis stared at her. So what now? Do you go back to that life and forget all this? She shook her head. No, I don't want to go back, not like before. You think you can live like this forever? In a 2-bedroom rental with mismatched furniture and boxed-up dishes. I don't care about any of that, she said. Care about how I feel when you're here, when I'm making pancakes while the kids bicker over crayons, when you laugh with Aiden like he's your own. He swallowed hard. You should have told me. I know. They stood there, the silence thick and unfamiliar. Finally, Travis ran a hand through his hair. I'm not mad because you're rich. I'm mad because I let myself believe this was something real, something honest. It is. Then why didn't you just tell me the truth from the start? Because I didn't want this to be about money. Every man I've ever dated either tried to use me, impress me, or resented me. You were different. You didn't care about any of that. You cared about my kid, about me. Travis's voice dropped. You made me feel like I belonged here, like I wasn't failing. You're not failing, she said, stepping closer. You're showing up, you're raising a daughter on your own. You're kind, patient, steady. He looked away. Yeah, well, none of that pays the bills. I don't want your money, Travis. He exhaled sharply. I don't want yours either. They stood quietly until the sound of little footsteps echoed from the hallway. Aiden shuffled in, rubbing his eyes. Morning, he mumbled. Hey, buddy, Travis said, his voice softening. Ready to show me that diorama? Aiden nodded, tugging his hand. Come see. He followed the boy into the living room, pretending not to notice how Brielle watched him, her expression unreadable. Later, when Ava joined them after school, the kids sprawled out on the floor with markers and construction paper, planning a new project together. Brielle sat on the arm of the couch, watching them, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I know this changes everything, she said quietly. It does, Travis admitted. But it doesn't have to ruin it. He didn't answer, he couldn't, not yet. That night, he walked Ava home, his thoughts a tangled storm of questions and what-ifs. She chatted about her day, her science teacher, her best friend's new puppy. He nodded, smiled, but his mind was miles away. He couldn't stop thinking about Brielle. About the look in her eyes when she said she didn't want to go back. About how, for the first time in a long time, someone had seen him not for what he lacked, but for who he was. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in over his head. He didn't belong in her world. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to belong to it either. Travis didn't go back to Brielle's apartment for 5 days. He told himself he was busy patching drywall for a landlord in Long Island City, replacing a busted water heater in Brooklyn, but the truth was, he didn't know how to be around her now. Not when she sat on a throne she tried to hide, not when every moment replayed in his head with new context. On the 6th day, Brielle came to him. It was late afternoon, and he was crouched under a kitchen sink in a park slope brownstone, tightening a rusted valve with water dripping onto his sleeves. He didn't hear her footsteps, but the voice behind him stopped him cold. "I asked your boss where you were." He slid out slowly, wiping his hands on a rag as he looked up. She wore jeans and a sweater this time, her hair pulled into a low ponytail, eyes tired but determined. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know." He stood, tossing the wrench into his bag. "I'm working." "I'll wait." He stared at her, then turned back to finish the last few adjustments. The faucet hissed when he tested it, but it held. No leaks, no excuses left. Outside, the sky hung low and gray. She followed him down the sidewalk, neither of them speaking until they reached the corner. "I didn't come to explain again," she said. "Came to ask you something." Travis folded his arms. "You always get what you ask for." "No," she said, "not lately." He glanced at her, then sighed. "Go ahead." "There's a gala tomorrow night. Have to go. It's for the foundation my father started. Scholarships for underprivileged kids. Promised Aiden I wouldn't drag him, and I don't want to go alone." He laughed under his breath. "You want me to be your date to a billionaire ball?" "It's not a ball," she said quickly. "It's a fundraiser, and I want you there because you're the only person who won't pretend around me." He shook his head. "I don't belong in that room." "Neither do half the people going." He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't own a suit." She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a card. "Go to this shop. The owner's expecting you. It's taken care of." "Of course it is." "Travis." He stepped back. "I need to think." She didn't chase him, just nodded, then walked away with her hands in her pockets and her shoulders tight. The next morning, he stared at the card for a long time before finally taking the train to Midtown. The shop was tucked between a wine bar and a jewelry store, its windows filled with mannequins in sleek wool coats and crisp tailored jackets. Inside, a man with silver hair and a tape measure around his neck greeted him with a single nod. "So you're the one." Travis raised a brow. "That obvious?" "She said you'd hesitate," the man said. "She also said you'd show up anyway." The suit fit like it had been made for him. Midnight blue, slim but not tight, with a shirt that didn't itch and shoes that didn't squeak. He didn't recognize the man in the mirror, but Ava's eyes went wide when he walked through the door that evening. "Whoa," she whispered. "You look like James Bond." "Yeah," he said, tugging at the tie. "You think Brielle'll like it." "She'll freak out." He kissed her forehead. "You be good for Mrs. Chen, okay?" "She's letting us make cupcakes." "Eat one for me." That night, he stood outside the glass doors of the venue for longer than he probably should have. The building was all sleek lines and polished stone, with music drifting out through the revolving entrance and valets in black jackets directing a line of luxury cars. He took a breath and stepped inside. The ballroom was gold and cream, chandeliers dripping like frost from the ceiling. Waiters passed hors d'oeuvres on silver trays, and everyone looked like they'd stepped off magazine covers. He felt like a mechanic who'd wandered into a movie set. Then he saw her. She stood near the center of the room, deep navy dress shimmering under the lights, her shoulders bare, her hair swept up with a hint of sparkle at her ears. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. She looked like someone who could buy the city if she felt like it. She also looked like the same woman who'd burned toast in her kitchen while telling him about Aiden's obsession with dinosaurs. Her gaze found him instantly. "You came," she said, stepping toward him. "Didn't want to," he admitted, "but Ava said you'd freak out if I didn't. She's a good judge of character." They stood there, the buzz of the room fading around them. "You look incredible," he said. "You clean up better than I imagined." He glanced around. "So what happens now? Do we mingle with CEOs and talk about hedge funds?" "Actually, we dodge small talk and sneak out to the balcony." She led him through the crowd, weaving between clusters of wealthy donors and polished executives. No one stopped her. No one questioned who he was. Out on the balcony, the city stretched wide and glittering. "I hated every second of planning this," she said, leaning on the railing. "But I had to be here. It's one of the only things my father built that actually helped people." Travis nodded. "Scholarships, right? Thousands of them, for kids who'd never have had a shot otherwise. I thought maybe if I kept it going, some part of him would still matter." He looked at her, the wind catching a strand of her hair. "You matter." She turned to him. "Do I?" "You do to me." Her breath hitched, even after everything. "I don't care about the money. I care that you told the truth when it counted." "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I would either." She stepped closer. "So what does this mean?" He reached for her hand. "It means I'm still scared, but I'm here anyway." "Then I guess we're both doing something brave." He kissed her before he could talk himself out of it. It wasn't careful. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real and rough and full of everything they hadn't said. When they pulled apart, her eyes were glassy. "I should probably make a speech soon," she whispered. "I'll be watching." As she turned to go, he caught her wrist gently. "Brielle." "Yes." "After this, come home with me, not to stay, just to meet Ava properly, as you." She smiled, not like a billionaire, not like a woman used to getting what she wanted, but like someone who'd finally been seen. "I'd like that." Travis stood just inside the front door of his apartment, watching Ava and Aiden collapse into a pile of pillows on the floor, laughing breathlessly as they argued over which movie to watch. There were half-finished cupcakes on the coffee table, glitter glue drying on poster boards beside them, and the unmistakable sound of two kids becoming fast friends. Brielle sat on the edge of the couch, her heels tucked under her, sleeves pushed up as she reached for a handful of popcorn. She was still in the navy gown, but it no longer looked like armor. It looked like memory, something she'd worn for a version of herself she was finally walking away from. "I don't think I've ever seen her this loud," Travis said quietly, nodding toward Ava. Brielle smiled without looking away. "She's incredible, fierce, kind." "She gets it from her mom," he said, almost absently. Brielle turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. "I haven't heard you talk about her before." Travis leaned against the wall, arms folded. "We were young. It wasn't supposed to be forever. But Ava came along and forever happened anyway. She left when Ava was 3. Couldn't handle the pressure, I guess. Haven't heard from her since." "I can't imagine leaving her," Brielle said. "You wouldn't," he said it simply, without question. She looked down at her fingers. "Aiden's father passed away before he was born. I've tried to fill both roles, but I've gotten it wrong more times than I can count." "You didn't get tonight wrong," Travis said. She looked up. "No. You showed up, you let them be kids, you let yourself be here." She stood and walked toward him, her expression unreadable until she reached him. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," she said quietly. "What?" "The mess, the noise, the way your fridge hums and the floor creaks in the hallway. It's not perfect, but it's real. And I feel more human here than I ever did in any penthouse. He tilted his head. You saying you miss leaky pipes and takeout containers? I'm saying I miss being able to breathe. Ava shouted something from the living room, and Aiden followed it with a dramatic gasp. Brielle glanced back, her mouth twitching into a smile. You know, she said, if you ever wanted to get out of the city for a weekend, I have a place in Salem. Nothing fancy, just a little house my father bought years ago. It's quiet, woods like no cell service. You're inviting me to your secret forest hideaway now. I'm inviting you and Ava. And I'm asking if maybe this thing between us could be something more than late-night dinners and homework help. Travis exhaled slowly. I want that. I'm just trying to figure out how to believe it's real. I'll prove it. How? She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded envelope. This is Aiden's new school registration. Public school, same district as Ava. I pulled him out of the elite academy last week. He stared at her. You're serious? I want him to grow up knowing real people, real friends, not just security guards and tennis coaches. He took the envelope, ran his fingers over the edge. That's a big change. I'm not afraid of change anymore. He looked at her for a long moment, then leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Then let's do it. She laughed softly. That easy? No, but worth it. The next morning, Travis woke early. He made pancakes with too much vanilla, let the kids pour syrup like it was currency, and watched Brielle pad in wearing one of his old t-shirts, hair damp from the shower, barefoot and smiling like she belonged there. Later that week, he helped her move the last of her things out of the rental. She didn't go back to her penthouse. Instead, she leased a modest brownstone near the park room for both kids, a small garden, and enough space to build a life that wasn't wrapped in marble and glass. She didn't tell anyone from her board where she'd gone. They sent emails. She didn't answer. She stepped down from the company officially, handing the reins to someone who actually wanted the weight of it. All she asked was to keep the scholarship fund in her name. Travis found more work, better jobs. A friend of Brielle's, someone she trusted, offered him a contract to renovate a series of older townhomes in the Bronx. He took it. It paid more than anything he'd ever done, but it wasn't charity. He earned it. On a rainy Saturday in late spring, they stood under a white tent in the garden of the brownstone. There were fairy lights strung between trees, music playing from a speaker tucked under a table, and two kids dancing barefoot in the grass. Brielle wore a simple ivory dress. Travis wore the same midnight blue suit. The officiant asked if they had vows. Travis reached into his jacket pocket and unfolded a crumpled scrap of notebook paper. I never thought I'd be standing here, he said, voice low and rough. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't think someone like you would ever choose someone like me. But you did, not just once, every day, every morning. Every time you looked at me and saw who am not what I have, you made me believe in the kind of love that doesn't care about bank accounts or resumes, just heart. And I promise every day I'll show up with mine wide open. Brielle stepped forward, eyes shining. I spent most of my life being told what I should want, what I should be. Followed every rule, filled every box, but nothing ever felt like home until you walked through my door and sat down to help my son with math. You didn't try to impress me. You didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. You just stayed, and you've been staying ever since. So, promise to build a life with you that's messy and imperfect and ours. Completely ours. There weren't hundreds of guests. Just a few close friends, the two kids, and neighbors who'd come out to hold umbrellas and pass extra slices of cake. Brielle kissed him before the words were even finished. Travis kissed her back like he meant it, like he'd never stop meaning it. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the last candle had burned low, they sat on the back steps of the brownstone, fingers intertwined. I don't think this version of life was in either of our plans, she said softly. No, he agreed, but it's way better than anything I imagined. She leaned into him. You still think I'm out of your league? He kissed her temple. No, I think we rewrote the whole damn rulebook. And just like that, for the first time in years, everything made sense. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Because they'd chosen it together. A handyman and a billionaire. 2 parents. 1 love. And a life that finally felt like home. The sun filtered through the trees in golden slants, dappled light dancing on the porch where Travis stood barefoot, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. The lake beyond the cabin was perfectly still, a mirror of the morning sky, and the sound of children's laughter floated faintly from the trail behind the house. Ava and Aiden had taken the bikes down to the meadow. Brielle's idea, something about letting them explore without constant supervision while still being close enough to call out. He turned at the sound of the screen door, creaking open behind him. You made it through a full night without checking your work email, he said without turning. Brielle's arms wrapped around his waist as she pressed her cheek between his shoulder blades. Because you changed the password. You asked me to. Still a bold move, she murmured. He glanced over his shoulder. You slept. For once, yes. He set his mug down and turned to face her fully. Her hair was still damp from the shower, pulled into a loose braid that trailed over one shoulder. She wore one of his flannel shirts, unbuttoned over a tank top and shorts. Her skin glowed soft in the morning light, and there was something about the way she looked at him, now not like someone who needed rescuing or reinventing, but like someone who had finally stopped running. There's something I want to show you, she said. He followed her around the cabin, past the tiny vegetable patch they'd started together, and toward the old carriage shed at the edge of the property. She pulled open the doors with both hands, revealing a space that had been empty when they arrived 3 days ago. Now, it held pine shelves stacked with labeled crates, 2 easels facing the window, and an old drafting table in the corner, freshly sanded. You did all this. I needed a place to work that didn't feel like an office. Somewhere I could build something new, she said. Not a company, just ideas. Travis stepped inside, running his hand over the edge of the table. You're not going back to any of it, are you? I don't want my life to be about boardrooms and quarterly reports. I want to create something different, she said. I've been thinking about launching a mentorship program for single parents who want to start businesses. Micro grants, resources, real support. He looked at her, pride blooming in his chest. That's brilliant. I want to name it after your mom. His breath caught. You never met her. No, but you told me the way she never gave up. That's what this whole thing needs to be about. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. You're going to change lives, you know that. So are you, she whispered. You already changed mine. They stayed in the cabin for the rest of the week, long enough for Aiden and Ava to build a fort out of fallen branches, long enough for Brielle to fill 2 sketchbooks with plans and ideas, long enough for Travis to start measuring the back room and scribbling notes for a renovation. The silence between them was never heavy. It was full of understanding. Their routine was simple mornings by the lake, afternoons walking trails, evenings telling stories around the fire pit. On the last night, Brielle lit candles and made dinner while Travis grilled outside. Ava and Aiden decorated the porch with paper lanterns, and when they all sat down to eat, it felt more like a family than anything Travis had ever known before. Midway through the meal, Brielle reached under her chair and pulled out a small box wrapped in brown paper. I got you something, she said, sliding it across the table. Is this because I finally beat you at cards? He asked, grinning. Open it. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, hand-stitched along the spine, with his initials embossed in the corner. I thought you could use something to sketch out your designs, she said, for the brownstone or your own place. wherever you want to build next. He looked at her across the table. I want to build with you. She didn't blink. Then let's start. In the weeks that followed, everything began to shift, but not in the way it used to. There were no abrupt re-entries into their old lives, no dramatic returns to luxury or chaos. Instead, they built around what mattered. Brielle's mentorship program launched under the name the Leela Foundation, and Travis helped renovate the first community space. It opened an old bakery converted into a drop-in center with childcare, free coffee, and enough room for people to dream. He worked more steadily than he ever had, but he always made it home in time for dinner. They ate together every night around the same table, sometimes with paint in their hair or flour on their sleeves, sometimes in silence, exhausted, but always together. On a crisp autumn morning, Ava and Aiden lined up at the door in matching backpacks, while Brielle tightened their scarves. "You've got your lunches?" she asked. "Yes," they chorused. Travis leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You're the only woman I know who can coordinate a school drop-off and still look like." She stepped out of a magazine. She rolled her eyes, then turned to him. "You're the only man I know who can install a water heater and read bedtime stories in the same hour." The kids ran ahead, and she slipped her hand into his. "You ever think about doing this forever?" he asked. She smiled. "I stopped thinking, just know." Later that year, they hosted Thanksgiving at the Brownstone, their first as a family. The table was crowded with friends from the neighborhood, mentors from the foundation, and a few good souls who'd wandered into their lives unexpectedly and stayed. There were no place cards or crystal stemware, just mismatched plates, loud laughter, and a warmth that filled every corner of the house. Travis stood at the head of the table, his hand in Brielle's, Ava and Aiden on either side. "I didn't know what family looked like until I met you," he said. "Now, can't picture life without it." Brielle looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Home was never a place, it was a person, and I found mine." They toasted with cider, danced in the kitchen after the dishes were done, and when the last guest had gone, they curled up on the couch under a single blanket, watching the fire die down. Travis kissed her temple. "You still glad you answered the maintenance line that day?" She laughed softly. "Best broken window I've ever had." He pulled her closer. "We fixed it." "No," she said, resting her head on his chest. "We built something better." And they did. A home, a family, a future shaped by love, not circumstance. Together, always.